Hello, my name's Gary Hibbard and I'm the Managing Director of Agency, a part of the Cyberfort Group. This presentation that I'm about to perform for you is the presentation that I gave at PCI London conference on the 24th of January 2019. This is your opportunity to watch this if you weren't able to be there on the day. So I hope you find it of relevance and of interest. So I am going to start this in pretty much the same way that I did when I actually presented this in London. And that is to start with a fairly bold statement. And that statement is simply this: I believe we are at war. Now, I'm not going to tell you that we're at war with cyber criminals. I think we all know that. And although that is a big problem, of course, I think there is something else that we're battling. I believe we're at war with complacency. And it's a war we have to win if we are ever going to make our digital world a safer place to live and certainly a safer place to trade in. Now, before I get into the detail of all of this, perhaps I should introduce myself a little bit better. As I've already said, my name is Gary Hibbard. I'm the Managing Director of Agency, which is a part of the Cyberfort Group. We are the consultancy side of things, focusing very much on information security governance frameworks and risk management. But Cyberfort is also made up of the Bunker. We also have Arcturus, which is a CREST accredited pen testing business. Essentially, together we provide end-to-end suite of secure services to help with PCI compliance. It's as simple as that, really. Now, personally, I've been involved in IT and information security for a very long time. In fact, since I was 15 years old. When I saw a young Matthew Broderick play a hacker in a movie that depicted him playing a game, a war game, and he almost started World War III. And that was 35 years ago. It sparked an interest in computers for me, and it's never really left me. I'm still as passionate today as I was 35 years ago. But we've certainly come a long way since those early days of technology. Days when the very first computer virus was created by Amjit and Basit Farouk back in 1986. Through to the birth of Google in 1996, which was originally called Backrub. I don't know if you knew that, but they changed the name to Google because it sounded better, I guess. And I'm certainly glad that they did, because I'm sure I would hate to hear people ask, have you ever backrubbed yourself? It's a strange question. Of course, in 2004, we saw the birth of Facebook and indeed PCI DSS as well. And from 2004 to where we are today, we saw the birth of all manner of different kinds of technology. Everything from Twitter and LinkedIn, YouTube, iPhones, iWatches and such, to the point that we are in now where we have the Internet of Things and the Internet of everything. We've gone from a very short space of time back in 1993 where we were sending our very first emails to today where we're sending over 260 billion emails every single day. We've gone from a world of having no computer viruses in '86 to having hundreds and thousands of new strains of malware and virus every single day in 2019. We've gone from a world in 1950 where we had no credit cards, to today where we have over 755 million credit cards and payment cards in circulation. And credit cards aren't credit cards anymore. They are on our devices, they're on our phones, they are on our watches, they are on our rings. We now access payment technology in ways that just 5 years ago would have seemed like science fiction. Our world is complex and it's not getting any simpler. And of course our regulatory world is getting complex too, to some degree. Of course GDPR became the buzzword of 2018, and Verizon in the same year reported that for the first time in many years they had seen a reduction in PCI DSS compliance. So PCI London's magazine this month actually has an interesting byline, and that is PCI DSS in the firing line? Well, perhaps it is, and it's in the firing line because of complacency, perhaps. Now, as Sun Tzu, the famous author of Art of War, once said, every battle is won before it is fought. And I think that's extremely important for us to remember, meaning that the skillful leader would prepare everything before going into battle, thereby securing their victory. And I think his words are as relevant today as they ever were. Going into 2018, we shouldn't have taken our eye off PCI DSS to focus on GDPR. We should have used the standard to help with GDPR. Now, we all know that data protection is about more than just technology, but did we become complacent in our approach to the regulations and to standards? Or were we so stretched that we didn't have time to do both PCI and GDPR? Perhaps the complacency was at the board level. Or perhaps we thought that we had addressed our PCI and DSS worries, as if we only do it once and then move on. If that's the case, then this is a call to arms. Your company needs you. Your company needs you to think broader than just simply one step in time. We need you to think about perhaps how you engage with your wider business on data protection. Now, this means not only engaging with your IT function, but also to engage broader than this. Where we have seen PCI being truly successfully implemented is when organizations engage at every level of the organization. Remember that no battle was ever won by one division alone. Those who are truly victorious in this area will engage with the board, the IT function, the compliance, operations, the risk teams, the sales and marketing, the HR, and so on and so forth. And they will galvanize them into understanding the importance of security and using all available tools at their disposal. And there are few tools that are more effective than PCI DSS as a structured technical standard. Now, when agency works with organizations large and small, we see the importance of bringing people on the journey and focusing on their roles and responsibilities. We look for the hotspots in each department and we ask, how can PCI DSS help in this area? Can we reduce waste? Can we improve efficiency? And what do they need to know? If we hear the board saying that we only need to improve our technical infrastructure without thinking about the people, then we will know that we have an issue. And we'll say to them, you have a picnic problem. And they'll say, oh, we have a picnic problem. Let's write that down. What is a picnic problem? And we will say, you have a problem in chair, not in computer. And unfortunately, quite often, it's the chairs around the board table that are the problem. Now, we'll explain that you can't simply focus on technology because it's people using technology that causes the most problems. Either those using it or developing it. I recall a board of an IT software house proudly telling me once that how their 150 employees all had security training on an annual basis and that they didn't need to worry about anyone slipping up. So I asked them what specific training they gave and they explained, and then I said, okay, that's great. So what about your specific training to your developers, for instance? What secure coding practices were they following? And they looked at me and I looked back and I said, OWASP? And they said, oh what? And I said, oh dear, I think we have a picnic problem. People are people, and unfortunately security might not be at the top of their list of priorities. That's not what they're being judged on more often than not. And that's normally because no one has bothered to explain why it's important and how it's relevant to their role and their responsibilities within it. And that can leave you vulnerable. And that's something where we cannot allow to continue. In Cyberthought, we believe you can't move forward until you know what your vulnerabilities are. So a good risk management framework is absolutely imperative. But it can't just focus on IT. You're starting to see a theme here. It needs to address people, premises, processes, PCs and systems, and providers or suppliers, however you want to frame it. People often forget that PCI DSS is still a risk-based management system, meaning you don't have to protect everything. Think about the scope. Don't try and boil the ocean. If you try and do everything, you'll end up doing nothing. When we were working, for instance, for a large organization a few years ago now, we looked at their scope and it was just too wide. It was like they were trying to boil the ocean. They had literally implemented the same controls across their entire organization. It was as if they had decided to put the same stringent rules to all areas. Now, that's an admirable approach, but in truth, in your homes, you know, you wouldn't put the same locks on all your doors and all your windows and your garage door, on your shed, you know, and on your car. You'd apply different kinds of protection for different security requirements. The overload was killing the project and having a real negative impact as well on the morale of the team and the culture of the business too. Suddenly the team was starting to see as a business disabler, and people were starting to really retract from what they were trying to achieve. So what we did was, following a good risk and vulnerability assessment process, we identified where their key risk areas were and where any payment card details were being held or being processed, and then we applied appropriate technical and non-technical controls, because not all controls are technical. They're not all IT related. Yes, of course, IT is important. We know PCI is a rule-based control system and is largely aimed at IT, but it is not the whole story. IT is the mechanism by which data is controlled and moved and processed from one place to another. But remember, it is people that use the systems, so you need to have a robust mechanism to manage your people, including a training program. The analogy being that if we focus too much on the IT, it's a little bit like just only focusing on your car's health, your MOT, and saying that your car's robust to work on the roads, but you're not thinking about the person that you're putting behind the wheel. You're not training them, you're not equipping them with the knowledge that they need. So you also need to think about other things as well, not just the people. You need to think about the people's people, third parties. So people that you perhaps outsource some of your processes to. What are they doing around their security? This means there needs to be a good level of supplier management and due diligence that takes place. You know, when was the last time you conducted a full TPAR, a third-party audit review? If you haven't done that in a while, perhaps now's the time. Finally, even something as simple as asking about, you know, your visitors. This is why I say it's not all about IT. I performed an audit recently on an organisation and on their IT systems and from a PCI perspective. Now, from an IT infrastructure perspective and management, they were second to none. But on arrival at the site on the second or third time, I think it was, I was given free rein to walk around the offices because the receptionist recognised me, and I explained to her that I'd been asked to go immediately to the boardroom to present, and I was late, and human nature being human nature, she allowed me in. She trusted me. She hadn't been told to respond in any other different way. Now, in the NCA cyber threat report, they call 2017 the year of ransomware. Now, we need to look deeper than this. We need to look beyond that one line. It was also the year of supply chain threats and fake news. So whilst IT is important, we can't forget the risk assessments, and the people sat using these systems are potentially one of the weakest links that you have, but also one of your greatest allies. That's when complacency sets in if we just focus on one particular area, especially if we aren't telling people about what we expect from them. We're simply updating our firewalls but not updating our human firewalls. That's why we need to make sure that they are aware of what policies and procedures are in place. That's why they are so important. Now, I'm not going to tell you what policies you need to have in place to protect your data. You most likely already know that. And if you don't, then feel free to get in touch and I'll talk you through it. I'll happily share my experiences and what we believe is a good, robust set of policies and procedures to help with PCI and other standards. But what I am going to say is that your policies need to be easy to understand, to be clear, unambiguous, and most importantly, supported from the top. What your policies need to look like is that someone at the top of the business cares and supports them and follows them too. This is no time to be paying lip service to PCI at any level of the organisation, and we shouldn't be paying lip service to it at all. PCI is a powerful tool that should be used to great effect and can be used to great effect as well. Going back to the Verizon's report that I mentioned earlier, in their report they point out that almost 49% of organisations that they surveyed are using PCI compliance to meet security requirements. We do it all the time. We help organisations do just that. Whilst building a ISO 27001 framework, we keep in mind GDPR, but we also use PCI DSS as the technical strain and component to bolster 27001. That's how you can effectively manage your infrastructure, your compliance program around PCI and GDPR and 27001, because there are elements that sit in all areas such as incident management. Knowing how to respond in a crisis has never been more important, and certainly if there is a data breach, it is all important. But typically, incident management is an area of weakness for most organisations. Now notice I'm saying incident management, not disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is a different thing. Quite often when I go to organisations and they say to me, we have a DR plan, I will say, but do you have an incident management plan? Do you know how this works? Again, the analogy simply being that having a DR plan is, well, it's like me saying that I have a good selection of books by Jamie Oliver. Lots of good cookbooks. I don't know how to use them. I don't know what I would do if I was left alone with these books, but I have them. An incident management plan means that you understand how to implement your disaster recovery plans. You know how to use them. Now, what we would say is that you need to, first and foremost, you need to test your incident management plans. When we do that, when Cyberfort and agency run exercises with organisations, we will conduct tabletop exercises with the teams. Nothing to do with the technical, nothing to do with IT at this point. We will get senior managers around the table, perhaps for the very first time, and we will provide them with a scenario. And we will provide them with a scenario, for instance, that there's been a data breach and 3 million card details have now been released into the wild, and that we're being blackmailed. And we will get them to work through that scenario. We will tell them that the impact is absolutely on GDPR, that there is an absolute impact upon reputation. There's going to be a financial impact. We will tell them that there's an impact upon clients and operations, because now customers are calling in, upset, angry. We will do that, and we will see how they respond. And typically when we run those kinds of exercises, certainly for the first time, everything falls apart. But that's a good thing, because that's the time you want to see it fall apart, so that you can put it back together again. So how should you respond in a crisis? Well, one of the last things you want to do is get into paralysis through analysis. This is not a time to start to blame and to find the root cause. What you need to do is be able to respond quickly, honestly, and in a transparent manner. Absolutely making sure that somebody is investigating the cause of the breach, so that you have a compelling story to tell, because you will need to have that. But what you need to do is learn how to work under those kind of pressure situations. And one of the key things when you are managing a major incident is to understand that communication is key. Communication internally and communication externally too. And it's only through exercises like that, it's only through exercises by doing risk assessments that you find out where you are weakest. You also find out where your strengths are. You also find out where the strengths are of your, the enemy, as if you like. That's when you can find out how to actually go into battle more convincingly. That's how you beat complacency as well. And I'm going to finish now just by simply, again, quoting Sun Tzu, because he said it extremely well. He said that if you know your enemy and know yourself, you can fight 100 battles without disaster. I think, to paraphrase that, I would simply say, if you know your own weaknesses and that of your enemies too, you can fight 100 battles without fear of losing the war against complacency. Because remember, that's what I think we're fighting. And we have to keep fighting that fight. And we can't afford to lose. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. I hope you found it interesting. At that point, of course, we finished the presentation at PCI London, and we hope people found it interesting. We hope you found it interesting. It was a slightly different approach, I think. If any of the points that we've raised have raised any questions, or you'd like to challenge me perhaps on some of my assertions, then I'm always happy to hear from you. So thank you once again. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. And perhaps we will see you at the next PCI London event, or indeed the next Cyberfort event that we hold. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon. Thank you.